Good afternoon and welcome to part 3 of our workshop series. So after today, we will be more than halfway through. So we have a really exciting topic today. We're going to look at attribution, analytics, Google Ads, formerly known as AdWords. We're actually going to look at Facebook and Bing today as well. So we have a very exciting class. So let's go ahead and jump into it. We have a lot to cover. So our first slides are really just don't copy our materials, and that we have made every effort to make these as up to date as possible. We do have a few recommendations for you today. One, that you are logged into your account, and two, if you have two monitors, we would really advise to have that set up and in use today so that you can view the presentation on one screen and have your CTM account open on the other so that we can view things side by side. We also recommend using the latest version of either Google Chrome or Firefox in that you have pop-ups enabled. If you do not already have an account with us, you could head over to our website and head to our plans page and sign up. We'd be happy to have you. Like I said, we have a packed agenda today. We're going to look at different attribution models. We're going to look at Google Analytics, our integration with them. So we're going to look at that data inside of CTM. We're going to look at that data inside of Analytics. We're going to look at Google AdWords. So we're going to look at the data we're sending into AdWords, the conversions. We're going to look at call-only ads and click-to-calls. We're going to look at Bing. We're going to look at call events, goals, and conversions and analytics, some advanced tracking sources, as well as our Facebook integration. So, yep, we have a full agenda today, and we will probably go over a little bit for 2 hours. I will try to go as quickly and be as efficient as possible. Okay, and this is me. My name is Jessica Michaels. I'm our Google guru and product coach here at Call Tracking Metrics. I'm proud to say that I've been a member of our team here for just about 4 years, and I'm really a complete analytics nerd. I find marketing optimization and strategy to be exciting, and I'm hoping to drop some knowledge and spark some excitement in all of you today. My background is really in marketing and analytics. I actually served as the marketing manager here for the past 3 years and have recently transitioned into this role. So now I get to educate everyone. So it's been very exciting. So before we get started, I always like to begin with a few exercises just to make sure that everyone is familiar with their GoToWebinar control panel. So first, if you can hear and see my screen, me right here, will you raise your hand just so that I can see that everyone is logged in and everything seems to be working properly. All right, I see hands going up all over the place. Excellent. And then the last thing I wanted to let you know is that we do have a questions box. So if you have any questions during the presentation, feel free to put them in and we'll address them during breaks. I actually have questions coming in and people are asking about handouts. Yeah. So this is a little, I have to apologize. For whatever reason, GoToWebinar just will not allow my my slides and handouts to work, but I have come prepared because this is a common issue for us. Let me switch my screen and I will show you. So this is our new support hub. We have the link to the Academy up here. And this is where you can register for some future classes, and we also have our on-demand series. So if you come to the on-demand, we'll have the handouts right here. So this will actually be the slides. So I can put this inside of the chat so everyone will get this. Send to all. There you go. You know what? I might have put that in the wrong place. Send it again. Yep, and then after the course today, I'll be uploading the video here, so it will be live. Takes a little bit to process, but shortly after we complete, we'll have the upload here so you could revisit it as well. So again, if you wanted to find this, let's just go back. This is our new main support hub. You could either go to Academy here or Academy here, and then the recordings and the handouts will all be under the on-demand. The past 2 days have been updated already with the recordings from the past 2 days. So with that, let's go ahead and begin. Okay. Now, the theme of today is very much Google themed, and then it's now Google, Facebook, and Bing themed. So really paid campaigns, I guess, would be a nice wrap up for it. But to begin, I always like to start with something fun. So let's put your Google knowledge to the test. What was the first ever Google Doodle? Was it the binary code for Google, a bouncing beach ball, a Burning Man stick figure, a sketch of Mount Rushmore, or a lava lamp? Let's see what you all think. And if you've attended this class before, I haven't changed the questions, so you get a free pass. So let's see, looks like just about everyone has voted. And let's take a look at the results. So pretty spread out. Apparently nobody thought it was a lava lamp, but it was actually a Burning Man stick figure. So the theory behind that is that the team was actually all heading to Burning Man, and so they made the first ever Google Doodle, not realizing what they were setting as they were heading to Burning Man. So let's see about one other one before we begin. The first Google computer storage was built with, was it popsicle sticks, Legos, duct tape, bubblegum, or hopes and dreams? If I had Jeopardy music, I would play it right now, but I will spare everyone and not hum it. Okay, looks like just about half of us have voted. Let's go ahead and take a look at the results. So looks like about 50% of us thought duct tape, 20% thought hopes and dreams. It was actually Legos, so 20% did get it correct. Popsicle sticks, 10% guessed, but was incorrect. So if you don't learn anything new today, you did learn some new Google facts, but hopefully we learn lots of other new stuff as well. All right, so let's jump into it. We've got a lot to cover. All right, so the first thing that we're going to address is that there are two types of paid calls for Google Ads. So this actually comes into play with Bing too. So really this is one ad, but it has two calls to action. One is a click, which will bring you to a landing page, and then one is actually clicking the phone number, which will trigger an outbound call. So because there's really two different calls to action here, we have two different integrations to accommodate them, and we're going to cover that in great detail. So the first one is what I like to call a click to landing page, which would look something like this. And the second one is when it's going to be a click to call, which would prompt you to place a phone call. In the case of a click to landing page, what's going to happen is that the tracking scripts will be applied when a user selects a paid click and goes to a landing page. So the call tracking metrics tracking script is going to be on the page, as well as the analytics tracking script on the page. Now, with a click to call, the major difference is that our tracking scripts aren't going to be there. Google Analytics tracking script isn't going to be there. So this is essentially going to act like an offline source. So one, we're actually able to do dynamic number insertion, but with this, we will not be able to, or we won't be able to attribute a session to this because there's not an actual session to your website. So to explain this more in depth, I have a helpful video. So enjoy.
Welcome to Call Tracking Metrics training video. In this workshop, we're going to be covering the setup of call tracking metrics integration with Google Analytics and AdWords. Before you begin, you must have user access to Google Analytics, admin access to call tracking metrics. You must be using the same email address to log into both systems. The call tracking metrics tracking script should be installed on your website. The Google Analytics tracking script should also be installed on your website. Google Analytics and Google AdWords should be synced and communicating. Lastly, auto tagging needs to be enabled in AdWords. Call Tracking Metrics has two integrations for the two types of Google paid calls, Google Analytics and Google AdWords. The AdWords integrations tracks calls from click-to-call ads and call extensions, while the Analytics integrations tracks and attributes data for click-to-landing pages. When performing a search, it's common for ads to have multiple call to actions, like displaying a phone number to call or a link to click. When you click to the landing page, there will be a GCLID in the URL. This is Google's paid click identifier. It essentially acts as a unique receipt numbers for paid clicks. When you click to a landing page, Call Tracking Metrics tracking script is present, as well as Google Analytics tracking script. The two softwares match sessions data and share session data. While for click-to-call, Google AdWords uses a Google forwarding number, which forwards to a call tracking number, and the two systems match and pass data. Two types of paid calls, both reporting as conversions in AdWords.
Okay, so hopefully that helped reinforce why we have two different integrations and really separate them one from the other. We're going to be exploring both of those in great depth later on today. But before we go down that path, we're going to explore some kind of core concepts. And the first one is the Google Analytics hierarchy. So inside of Google Analytics, we have accounts, properties, and views. Now, what Call Tracking Metrics does is we send calls as events into the property that will essentially show up for all the views, assuming that the view is not filtering out that data. So again, we'll be covering all of that in great depth throughout the day. So when we're talking about views, it's very easy to assume that it might look something like this. We always recommend having an all website traffic or a raw view, which will capture all of your sessions unfiltered. And then you can create additional views that will be essentially filtered data. So we could have one for Maryland traffic and then one for Annapolis traffic. So it's easy to assume that views may report like this, but in reality, on the flip side, it could be that all of our traffic came from Annapolis so that they'd all report the same. Now this comes into play with our calls. So if you are only accepting traffic from Maryland and you had a call, say from California, that call wouldn't be reporting in these two views, but would in this view. So real high level overview of how views will report data in analytics. And then we have some analytics terminology we need to become pretty familiar with because we're going to be referencing them throughout the day. So there's an event, and that's what we're going to send our calls into analytics as. An event is an action that takes place on the page. Now, typical analytics tracking is tracking sessions from page to page. So an event is something that doesn't require the URL to change. So typically it might be something like maybe a PDF download or a video that you're watching or something like a phone call. So a goal represents a benchmark of requirements for an activity. You define the activity requirements. So a goal example would be requiring a call to be over 60 seconds in length. And then a conversion happens when a goal's requirements are met and completed, which is known as a conversion or a goal completion. So a conversion example could be, a call that was over 60 seconds in length, if that's what your goal requirement was. Okay, so next we have our communication flow. Now this is really important when it comes to getting proper attribution to your calls, because what we really want is we want that robust campaign information. We want to know what keywords the people were searching, which led to the phone call or led to your website that led to a phone call. So in order to keep that communication flow working properly, call tracking metrics needs to be connected to Google Analytics. Google Analytics needs to be connected to Google AdWords. Analytics kind of plays a middleman in a lot of this integration. So we're tracking the data, Analytics is tracking the data, Analytics is communicating with AdWords. So when we submit the event to Analytics, we say, hey, we've tracked this session. Did you track it as well? And if so, do you have any additional information to pass us? So as long as Analytics is talking to AdWords, they're going to pass us back all that campaign information. So it's important that these are all synced up and communicating, or else our data transfer is going to be broke somewhere along the way. And we don't want that to happen. Okay, as I said very briefly before, tracking scripts. You're going to need to ensure that the CTM tracking script is in the head of all of your pages, as well as you need to make sure that the Google Analytics tracking script is on the page. We both need to be tracking the session in order to get the campaign information. So very important that both of these are present. So some troubleshooting that happens is old analytics. So pre-2005, analytics was Urchin. So if you're running Urchin Analytics, I mean, you're way outdated. And then in 2005 to 2009, they introduced the Get Tracker. And then in 2009 to 2013, I always just call this the push. They introduced this. And then, in 2013, Universal Analytics came along. So we're going to show some examples later on today with old analytics. They use 4 cookies rather than 1, and it can very commonly corrupt your data. It'll actually limit your reporting capabilities inside of analytics. So it's very, very important that you upgrade, and Google Analytics is going to tell you the same thing. So make sure we're using up-to-date analytics. So now we're going to move on to talk about attribution and cookies. So standard cookies inside of CTM last for 30 days. The cookie duration can be modified, and you can do that under your tracking script settings. We actually covered that yesterday, but we can reference it again once we're inside of CTM. So when it comes to attribution, we have 3 different attribution models, which can make things be a little tricky. So each system offers different attribution models, and they don't have to be the same. So that can cause lots of confusion. So we are going to talk about those. I've included another video just to help us understand the need for different attribution models. We have a couple other videos we're going to watch today as well. They're fairly short, so enjoy.
Meet Emily. She's going to help us understand attribution. Like many of us, Emily spends her leisure time surfing the web. While on Facebook, she sees a sponsored ad for fancy red shoes and clicks the link. The shoes are nice, but a little pricey for her, so she doesn't end up making a purchase. Later on that day, she's still thinking about the shoes and revisits the website organically, but still doesn't make a purchase. A few days later, while on her favorite blog, she notices a remarketing ad for those same shoes and clicks the banner. She really wants those shoes, but decides she's still not ready to purchase. Later in the week, she receives an email notifying her that the shoes are on sale. She clicks the link in the email and purchases the shiny red shoes. There were 4 touch points on the path to making the sale, so which individual touch point should receive credit for the sale?
So I think the video brings a very common question, who should receive credit? With something like attribution, it can be pretty tricky because there's not really a right or a wrong way to do things. It's really whatever makes the most sense for your business. Now, call tracking metrics offers 2 types of attribution. We have first touch and we have last touch. So as you can see in our lovely graphic here, last touch is going to give the most recent touch the attribution, while with first touch, it's going to continue. Oh, I think I have the wrong little GIF here. But with first touch, it's going to give the attribution to the first way the person came in, and then it's going to hold them to the cookie for 30 days for that. So while we have first touch and last touch, AdWords has something very similar. They have what is it? 5 different attribution models. So they have last click, first click. They have linear, which distributes the credit for the conversion equally across all clicks on the path. They have position-based, which is going to give 40% to both the first and the last click and corresponding keyword, and then spread the remaining 20% out across all other clicks on the path. And then there's also time decay, which will give the touch points closer to the time of the conversion more value than the original ones. So 5 different attribution models for AdWords. And just to keep things fun inside of analytics, there is 7 different attribution models. So they have last touch, last non-direct, last AdWords click, first touch, linear, which is going to share it evenly, time decay, which is going to give more credit to the touch points closer to the conversion, and position-based, which like AdWords is going to give 20% to the first and the last, and then distribute the other 40%. Oh, I said that backwards. Distribute the other 20% evenly amongst the other touch points. So then why are we talking about attribution? So what happens with this that can be pretty confusing is, here's a scenario with Google AdWords. So if we're using first touch attribution, if I come to your website by clicking an ad on Monday, and I don't make any conversion actions, I don't place a call or fill out a form, and then I come back to your website, say from a email campaign, click that, I'm still going to see the Google AdWords phone number, say this is Friday. And when the person calls in, the call will be credited to Google AdWords. Now, if I was using last touch, if I came in, say, from Google AdWords the first day and then came back on Friday organically, what I would see is the Google organic tracking source with campaign information for AdWords. So that can create some questions. Why would I see campaign information with my Google organic tracking source? Well, it's because we're going to relate the call to the original source the way the person came in, but we're not going to forget about the fact that they actually clicked an ad along the way. So that's how the different attribution models will come into play inside of the call log. Now, what can be confusing as well is that Google Analytics and Google Ads don't report in the same time. So Google Analytics is going to report on the time that the click took place as last touch, while Google Analytics is going to report first touch attribution, the time that the phone call took place. So what can happen in our reporting, which again, I'm going to cover this more in depth today as well, is that say you place a call or you come to a website from your Google AdWords on Monday, and then a week later you come back on Wednesday, and that's when you actually place a call. The event and conversion in analytics will take place on Wednesday, while in AdWords that call is going to post date to the time of the original click on Monday the week before. So the different attribution models can cause lots of different confusion. So the more that we understand them, the better we can understand how our data is reporting inside of the three systems. So that is attribution, always fun. And then another thing that we will need in order to get proper attribution for your paid calls is inside of Google Ads, you need to ensure that auto tagging is turned on. So what that's going to do is it's actually going to write in the GCLAD, which will be the tag on your landing page URL that we're looking for to swap for your Google AdWords number. This is account-wide inside of Google Ads, so once it's on, you should be set to go, but we'll be covering that when we're looking inside of ads as well. Okay, so next, now that we kind of covered the core concepts behind what needs to take place and what's taking place behind the scenes, we're going to explore that configuration inside of CTM. Okay, here we go. So let's jump over. This is the account that we've been working out of for the last 3 days. We started with an empty account on Monday, and we've been building it out throughout this course. But we're actually going to take a look real quick at another account that's been pre-built so that we can actually see some data. So. Yep. Take these off actually. Okay, these work. All right, so this is really the data that we're looking for. So if I expand this column, here we go. The first thing that we're going to report on is the actual landing page the user came in on, the referring source, and then this is going to be the actual search term they entered into the search box of Google. And then over here, this is the data that we're trying to capture. So here we have our campaign, our ad group, or keyword, our source, or medium, or ad content, and then the UA property that we have on the page. Now, if we open the cookies column, this is when we're going to see old analytics. Now, what you can tell right away is that it's writing in these UTM parameters, and it's usually this guy right here that writes in kind of nonsense that can throw off the reporting. So anytime you see something like 5 cookies, that's usually a sign that you're running old analytics, and what that's doing is really limiting your own reporting capabilities. So keep an eye out for that. Yep, so this is the Google Analytics property that we recognized on the page, And then if we come to this little link icon and hover over it, that's going to tell us where we sent the call event. So it's going to tell us that we sent it into this property and that it went under the category of calls. So anytime you don't see this link icon, it means that we did not send the event into analytics. So that's some quick troubleshooting. Something else, we have a check analytics button here. And this is going to be able to tell you what data we sent and if it was able to detect it. In this case, it does say we sent it, but it can't find it because I don't think we're linked anymore. Okay, so I did want to show you how we set up the sources. So if we go to new, one of the things I can't recommend like anymore, it's like best practices always, is to use our presets. These are going to be pre-configured sources. So really we've done all the programming for you. So for Google AdWords, we would just select, it's going to name it, add the description, set the type to be on site, meaning that we're going to try to swap for this number. And then we have to configure the trigger, which is pre-configured because it's preset. And in the case of AdWords, we're looking for the GCLID. Now that is Google's paid click identifier. So anytime that there's a click to your ads, Google's going to automatically add this into the destination URL. And the .+ really just says that any string of characters can go after that. So that's how we know to swap for your Google ads. Yep. And we also have a preset for your ad extensions, which would be right here. Now, because the ad extensions are essentially an offsite source, it's really just naming it, putting in a description, and making sure it's set to offsite. And that's really all you have to do with that. So that's the two sources. Okay, so next let's go in and let's look at how we configure the settings for our analytics integration. So to do that, we're going to head to our settings tab, integrations. I'm going to hop back into my class because now we want to set it up. So like the video said, and I said earlier, we have two types of integrations to get calls into AdWords as conversions. Really a great way to think about it is that Google Analytics is going to be for any time it's a click to a landing page, and Google Ads is going to be when it's a click to call or a call extension. So we're going to start with the analytics integration. So let's go into our settings. Now we are not connected, so we want to use our connect to Google button. It's going to ask you what user you'd like to connect to. So you want to make sure that the user you're selecting has access to the analytics property that you want to connect CTM to. So that would be this one for me. It's just going to ask for some permissions. So it's going to say that we are linked, but we want to make sure we are sending it to the right property because, as you can see, I have several different properties that I can send it to. So I'm going to be sending this to my call track. Actually, I want my all website data. Here we go, this one. Yep, we want to make sure we select the proper one. There we go. So here we are now successfully connected. You know when you're connected because all these toggles are going to appear. So the first thing it's going to tell you is the name of the property that we're connected to, the UA code for that property, and then the email address connecting the two. Now, when it comes to troubleshooting, it's important that the email address is always connected and active, because what we've seen in a lot of cases is that people go through their analytics and they'll clean up who has access to it. And if this person is removed from the analytics property, that's going to disrupt our communication with them. So in the case that I get removed from analytics, we can still send the data into analytics, but we're not going to have the ability to pull any of that campaign data back. So it really makes it one-way communication. So if you run into any problems similar to that, that's definitely a good place to look for troubleshooting. All right, so let's review the toggles. So by default, when you connect, the first two toggles are going to be enabled. The first one is simply allowing us to send events into analytics, and we're going to do that for every inbound call, text, and form. And the second one is to allow us to do that for offsite sources, so when there's no visitor data available. So that's going to be for your sources like, mailers, flyers, TV ads, maybe radio ads, billboards, anything like that. There's plenty of use cases why you wouldn't want to send, offsite data into analytics. And, we make it very easy. You could just disable it if that's not what you would like. But if you do choose to send offsite calls into analytics, we give you the option to send an initial page view prior to sending the offline event, so that it'll actually create a fake session. Yep, so we can go ahead and enable that. So up next, we have the option to send conversion events. So this is actually pretty cool. Jump into another tab. So what that's referencing is if we score a call. So by default, we're going to send an event into analytics for every lead or every inbound call, text, or form. And what we do is we send the value as the seconds of talk time, but we could send an additional event into analytics in the account that a call is converted. And we can send the value of this one as the value of the conversion. We can do other cool things like add ratings. That won't go into analytics though. Hit save. So when this is enabled, you're going to be able to see your total leads versus your total conversions or sales. So I think that's actually a pretty powerful option. We have had situations where it's like too many cooks in a kitchen. So the thing about scoring calls is that I can actually go in and update this and be like, you know what, that was actually a $30 sale, not a $25 one. And then I might be able to change my mind again and say, this was actually 25. I'm just kidding. And update it back. Now, what happens in this case is we're going to send an event every time you mark that. So in analytics, it's going to stack those values rather than default to the most recent one. Because I like to use the analogy that analytics is like history. You can't rewrite it, but you can, stack to it. So what we did is we gave you the ability to ensure that we only ever send one call sale event when marking it as a conversion, which prevents editing and resending a new event. So, like I said, it's coming to play when we've had kind of a little bit of too many cooks in the kitchen type of thing. We had too many people scoring the same call, which then really corrupted the data that was reporting in analytics. So we do give you the ability to limit that. So for this next piece, this is going to give us the option to send the event to the property that is linked to the call, text, or form. Now, what that means is by default, we're going to send them all into this property. But say you have multiple websites and you're actually tracking them with a different property, we can recognize the property on the page and then send it to that property instead. This concept is a little hard to explain, so I have another video for you to simplify it with our good friend Ken here. So enjoy.
Meet Ken. Ken is going to help explain how the fourth toggle inside the call tracking metrics integration with Google Analytics helps his business. Ken is a man of many trades and owns 3 separate businesses. He's a plumber, a builder, and a videographer. He has a separate website for each of his services and is tracking them with separate Google Analytics profiles. Even though he has 3 separate businesses, all of them ring directly to his cell phone. Call tracking metrics allows Ken to have unique tracking numbers on each of his websites, so he can identify the service a caller is interested in and the analytics property tracking the visits. Call tracking metrics allows Ken to be extra prepared for every call by playing a whisper message announcing which service and promotion the caller is interested in. Call tracking metrics will identify the Google Analytics profile on the web page and send the event into that profile, even if it's different from the profile connecting CTM and analytics. If an analytics property isn't discovered on the page, the event will default into the analytics profiles that's linked to CTM. This is extremely helpful for small businesses who want to use one call tracking metrics account but send events into multiple Google Analytics accounts.
Okay, so hopefully that helped explain the use case for that last toggle. When it comes to this, I like to advise a little bit of caution. If you're sending your events into probably more than 5 different analytics properties, I would recommend probably upgrading to our marketing plan or our contact center plan, because with that you'll have an endless amount of sub accounts. So you could actually create a different sub account for each one of those properties, because what you're going to do if you're filtering it all over the place is it's going to be hard to find like a whole truth, because inside of our platform we're going to report on your numbers as a whole. But if we're filtering all of your activities into 5 different places, it's going to be really hard to come up with a consolidated view to view all that data. So I do like to use a little caution when advising this feature, but it is very handy, in Ken's case, who has multiple small businesses. So we have that toggle for you. So next we have the option to send the events categorized by activity type. Now this option I actually highly recommend. It's kind of a little bit of a history lesson or how our product has evolved. Historically, we were just a call tracking platform. We didn't offer, features like texting and forms. So by default, we send all activities into analytics as calls. But now that we offer these new features, it makes sense to categorize them by activity type. So inbound call, inbound message, or form. So I actually highly recommend enabling that. It just makes, I think it just makes more sense, and it also help with troubleshooting down the road. Now you do have the option to automatically associate cost data from Google Analytics for each activity. So this is only available on the marketing or contact center plan because it does use advanced features like custom fields. But what this will be able to do is, say for Google AdWords, we'll actually be able to see the cost per click associated with that call. So we could say, so in our reporting, it'll actually show that you had a call from this campaign and this keyword, and we'll actually be able to tell you that that click costs, say, $5. So that's pretty cool. But because that does use custom fields and custom triggers, that is only available on the marketing and contact center plan. So that is the basic configurations for sending your calls, text, and forms into analytics. We do have some troubleshooting tools for you on the bottom here. One is to check to see if analytics is linked, and it will also check to see if you have any filters. So we did detect that we have a view that had a filter. So in this case, our view Susan has a filter called No Maryland. So if we had any calls coming in from Maryland, it would potentially not show in this view. So this is a nice troubleshooting tool if you're not finding or seeing the events in analytics. It could be that you're filtering them out. Yep. So right here we have a check AdWords link. So what that's going to do is it's going to check to see if the analytics property that we just linked call tracking metrics to is linked to AdWords. And that if it's linked to AdWords, it's going to see if it has auto tagging turned on. While in this case, it says that we are linked to AdWords to this account and it does not have auto tagging turned on. Now that is a false negative because that is looking real time, and what it sees is that I'm not currently running any ads, so it's not seeing any data, so it's assuming that because it sees nothing, auto tagging is turned off. So that can be a little misleading. And then the last one we have here is to refresh your linked property and view. So this will actually just to make sure that this user still has access to this property. So if your data was reporting a little funky, hit that refresh just to make sure that this person is still an active user inside of analytics. All right, everyone with me so far? If you're still with me, raise your hand. Let's see who's still paying attention. All right, I see hands going up, good. All right, so let's take a look at this data inside of analytics. But first, I have one more video that really helps simplify how and where we send the data in analytics. So let's watch that first, and then we'll get into analytics.
Welcome to Call Tracking Metrics training video. In this workshop, we're going to be covering how Call Tracking Metrics sends events into Google Analytics. Call Tracking Metrics sends events into Google Analytics for every inbound call, text, and form. An event in Google Analytics can be broken up into 4 main components: category, action, label, value. By default, the category will be calls. Inside of CTM, there are several different ways to customize the category of an event. The action will always be equal to the name of the tracking source. The label is made of 4 parts. The label of the tracking number. If the tracking number isn't labeled, it will report as not set. Next is the tracking number that was dialed, followed by whether or not this was a first-time or repeat caller. Lastly, the unique call identification number. By default, the value refers to seconds of talk time. If you have call conversion events enabled, the value will be the entered conversion amount. Commonly, the category will be calls. The action will always match the tracking source. Here's an example of how a call sale event would report in Google Analytics. Here's another example of how an event could report in Analytics. To view the events in Analytics, select the Behaviors tab. From the Behaviors tab drop-down, select Events, Events Overview. The Event Overview will display your top-performing events in Analytics. Hopefully these terms are starting to look familiar. Category, action, and label. If you click into the calls category, it will display the total number of reported calls. From here, you can select the action. The action will display your calls broken out by tracking source. If you click into one of the event action, it will bring you to the label view for just that tracking source. The label will display the 4 components of the event label. These are the basic fields of an event in Google Analytics. However, if you want to view additional information, you can do that by adding secondary dimensions to your report in Analytics. I would recommend viewing this data under the label view. Remember that an event is not a conversion. To set up a call conversion, you'll need to create a goal in Analytics. Thanks for watching.
Okay, so hopefully that helps explain where we're sending the data, but we're going to now cover that very in depth. So I see people actually questioning in. We're going to be taking a break in about 10 minutes, and I'll address all the questions then. So I just don't want you to feel like I'm ignoring you. I will get to them very soon. So here we are inside of analytics. This is the property that I connected my CTM account to. Now, one of the things that I mentioned earlier is that Google does not report in real time, which is fun because they actually have a real-time report. So, and with their real-time report, they actually have events. Now, real-time events will show up here. So let me actually, I'm going to enable send conversions and hit save. And then if I actually go to my call log, if I score a call, I'm going to say for $100, it should actually send my event. So in just a minute here, it'll actually show the event coming in. Now, I do like to address the real-time reports because the events will come in here and they show for 30 minutes, which it could be easy to assume, oh, there it is. It shows, yep, there's our call sale, and you can see that the event action was website, so cool. So it's easy to assume that it goes right from the real-time reports into the behaviors tab, but that actually is not true. For Google events, it could actually take between 2 to 5 hours for them to appear. I think typically it takes about 20 minutes, but it's not real time and it's really inconsistent, not real time. So we like to use a rule of thumb around here. If you're not seeing your events in over 24 hours, then there's definitely an issue we need to address. But typically give it at least 24 hours before we start worrying. Okay. So that is the real-time view. So to find the call events, we go to our behaviors tab, and then we have events, and we can come to our overview. Now I'm going to change this date range. This is all test accounts. So I'm going to make this real long. So here you can see the categories we have. So we have calls and call sales. So if I click into calls, this is going to give me a real high level overview saying that, you know, in this time frame, I've had a total of 387 calls. It's going to say the value is, you know, roughly 9,000. Now this is going to be seconds of talk time, so keep that in mind, and that the average value is 23 seconds. So that's saying that our average call is 23 seconds long. So we're not speaking to dollars for the calls category. Now, if we wanted to get a little bit more granular with this, we could look at the event actions. And this is going to break those 387 calls down by tracking source. So these are going to be a direct reflection of the tracking sources we have configured. I actually have multiple test account pointing here. Really at this time there would be nothing, so I wanted to have some examples for you. So again, this is going to break it down by source. So I know that my AdWords has had 111 calls and that they average, you know, 15 seconds talk time, while it looks like my Baltimore Sun actually has the longest talk time of just over a minute. And then if we click into the event label, that's going to break down all of our calls into the 4 components. So one is going to be the label of the tracking number itself. So what that means, because jump over here. So this is our inside of call tracking metrics. If you go to our tracking number setup, you have the option to label each individual tracking number. You don't have to name it exactly the same as the tracking source, but again, there's no reason why you wouldn't, so it's really up to you. But know that when you're looking at the event label, this actual label here is the physical label of the tracking number. This is going to be the tracking number that was dialed. And then it's going to report on whether or not this was a first time or repeat caller. And then lastly, this is the unique call identifier. So I could pull something like this. Hopefully this works because I have multiple accounts sending data here. Nope. But what it would do is it would actually be able to pull up that call. But like I said, I have multiple accounts pointing, so a little different. So I'm going to expand this. I'm going to look at my being paid. Now, on the event action page, if you click into any of it, that's going to make your label unique to just that event action. Now, here's where we could really put in more granular information. So if I was looking for something like the source or the medium of the call, it'll put that in here. So this is what we're hoping to see, you know, Bing and CPC. If we're getting direct none, then we probably have something configured a little incorrectly. We could also look for things such as the keyword of the call. So in this case, we had a pet product store. So we have dog carriers, we're going to park dog carriers. So all of that data lives deep inside of the event. You just have to pull it up with a secondary dimension. So that's really a quick high-level overview of the call events that we send into analytics. But once they're here, our next step is we want to get these into AdWords so they can report as conversions. Now, to do that, we need to create a goal. So to create a goal inside of Google Analytics, we come to our admin panel and we come to goals. And I have used all my goals, so I have to edit a goal. So we'll start here. I've seen this very inconsistent. So I think analytics A/B tests when they offer these templates. So if you don't see a template, don't worry about it because we're just going to use the custom one anyways. So next it's going to bring us to the description. So I might want to name this something like CTM calls. And just for fun, I'm going to put today's date so I can find it later. And the type should be event because we're sending the calls into analytics as events. Hit continue. Now this is where we can configure how we want this goal to complete. Now, I do find it useful to reference back to your events just to make sure that you get the categories, actions, and labels correct. So pretty simple in our use case now. We sent them all in as calls. So right here, this is actually all we need to create a goal. I could hit save, and then this goal would complete for every inbound call, text, or form, which is nice, but what's cool is that we can actually use the action label in value to further qualify this call, because we're going to send it in for every call. So if it's a wrong number or maybe they got a voicemail or something like that, do you want those to count as conversions in AdWords or do you want the more qualified ones? So this is where we get some flexibility with that. So like I said before, the action is going to be equal to the tracking source. So I could create one just for Google AdWords. Whoop, no, that wouldn't work. So here, so now this would be a goal that only completes for calls to our tracking source of Google AdWords. If we wanted to use the label, we would need to ensure that we're using regular expression. And then that would be first dash call. Just referencing back to what we just viewed in the label view, or we could also do repeat dash call, or if we wanted it to complete for all calls, we would simply leave it like that. So then it would report for both repeat or first time callers. The value, now this is where I think it's really great for qualifying because this is going to be seconds of talk time. So I could do something like 180. So now this goal will only complete if it's a first time caller to our source of Google AdWords and the call was longer than 3 minutes long. So I think it's safe to assume if the call was 3 minutes, they probably spoke to a person, they probably were calling the right company. and they're achieving, it was a qualified call. I've seen some of our clients, go as high as 600, which would be 10 minutes. So if you have a long qualifying or sales process over the phone, you could have it be greater than. I've also seen with some of our clients that they have a really short process or sales process over the phone. So they might want it to be less than. So if it goes over 10 minutes, it's probably a support call or something along those lines. So this gives us a lot of flexibility to customize what we as a business are going to qualify as a conversion. So the last little bit I like to reference here is use the event value as the goal value for the conversion. Now, this can create really misleading data because in this case, the value is seconds of talk time, and seconds doesn't really correlate to value in dollars. So we can disable this, but then it's going to require us to enter some numeric amount. So we could put 1. So when we see our total values for our call or for our goal completions, if it's 45, we know we had 45 goal completions. Or if your business has a model that, a lead is worth, say, $15, you could do something like that. So lots of different ways that you can customize how you want your goal to complete. The last little piece I wanted to mention in regards to the goals is that if you have, we're not in there anymore, but the call sale setting enabled, so we'll be sending scored calls into analytics. In that case, the value is actually equal to dollars. So that is when I would recommend using this, leaving that enabled, and then probably leaving this blank. So this would only count as a goal completion if this was a call sale, so the call was manually scored to the source of Google AdWords, and it was a first-time caller. Yep. All right, hopefully everyone's still with me. So I'm going to go ahead and save my goal. And here it is. Let's make sure it's turned on. So our next step, we're going to want to import this goal from analytics into AdWords. But before we do that, we need to ensure that analytics and AdWords are communicating. I'm losing my mouse. Okay. So to ensure that we are connected, we can go to our Google Ads linking. And I'll just apologize for this in advance. It's probably going to take me at least a year before I start referencing Google Ads and not Google AdWords. So I'll get there eventually. So here we can see that we are linked to a group and that we have 13 views enabled. So this is showing me the properties that we're linked to, or the Google Ads account, and then the different properties. So it looks like we're good. So the last step before we take a break is to actually import that goal we created into our new Google Ads experience. So to import a goal from analytics, we would head over to our tools, conversions, and then this one was actually already imported because they were full, but I'll show you how. I should have some other ones that aren't imported. So in order to import a goal from analytics into AdWords, we would hit our new conversion button. Then we would come over to import, and then we'd say from analytics and continue. So what this is, if we had any goals that weren't already imported, they would show here. So I apologize for that. I've over-exhausted my analytics account. You can see it was already imported, even though I changed the name, it's showing and reporting here. And you can see that it's actually had some conversions already to it. So that is kind of full circle as calls come into CTM After the call is completed, we're going to trigger an event into analytics. If the event meets the goal requirement and that goal is imported into AdWords, then that will report as a conversion in AdWords. So full circle for the analytics side of the integration. So with that said, let me look at these questions. Someone said these videos are super helpful. Can we find them anywhere? Yes, absolutely. They are all in our support hub. What I can do is put together a list of links so you can find them. So if you go to our help and then support hub, the videos, I believe, are all listed. If you go to our integrations, we're trying to categorize by type. So these are 2 of the videos we watched. We didn't actually watch this one. But what I can do, I can make sure to add the videos for you guys so that you can reference them here. So this will be the recording, the handouts, and I'll put links to the videos we watched as well so that you can have a quick jump to. So I will do that for you. And then somebody else asked, can we get a recording of this call? Absolutely. In that same place, I'll be updating the video by the end of today. With this recording, we'll be live here. This is one from probably June. So I'll get all that together for you guys. And then I have one more. Somebody asked, where can I get more training for the tracking and analytics part? We do have a bi-weekly class that we do, which is solely targeted to the analytics and Google Ads part of it. To find all the webinars that we are currently hosting, if we have our live training schedule now, this is all new and coming together, but here this lists all of our upcoming trainings. If you go to filter, these are known as workshops, but we also have our overviews, and then our attribution, Google Ads, and analytics. I guess the next one is Wednesday the 19th, so that's next week. So we do that one every other week, so that'll be a great resource for you as well. In addition to that, we do have what we call professional services, so that we can do personalized training for you. So there's some additional options for you. All right, great. How about if you've learned something new already, raise your hand. Hopefully we'll see lots of hands go up. I see hands going up. Excellent. Great, good stuff. So let's go ahead and take a 10-minute break. Stretch your legs, grab a cup of coffee. If you think of any questions, put them into the question box and I will address them after we get back. And this was a suggestion from feedback we had. I have cat videos to play during our break that is 10 minutes long. So enjoy these. When the video is done, you know break is over.
Ender, what? Uh-oh, what happened?
This is an ad for a project management tool called Monday.com. This is what it looks like, and this is what it feels like. So the tool works like this. We call this a board. Just put everything you need to do here, then put who's in charge of it here, and see where everything stands here.
Okay, welcome back. Sorry, it might be a little short. The ads in the cat video threw me off. So I don't believe I saw any questions come in. So let's continue with our presentation. We still have a lot to cover today and a short amount of time to do it. So before we start diving into the Google Ads side of things, I wanted to quickly address some of the most common mistakes that happen in regard to the Google Analytics integration. So one of the first ones is what we call hard coding the tracking number onto the page. So how our tracking works is that the numbers will dynamically swap. So if you're hard coding the number as in putting the tracking number itself directly onto the landing page, that can disrupt things. If you don't have the CTM tracking code installed on the page, that will make it so we don't get any session data. If Google Analytics isn't tracking the page, we're not going to be able to get any of the campaign data. If you have filters inside of Analytics, that can prevent our call data from entering into that view. If CTM and Analytics aren't fully integrated, that can corrupt the data, and that's referencing the email address connecting the two. Let's see, if Analytics and AdWords aren't connected, then we're not going to get the campaign information. And if you don't have goals created inside of Analytics and have those goals imported into AdWords, we're not going to see conversions. So those are some of the most common mistakes that I've seen along the way. Okay, so we have a quick pop quiz for brownie points. So why doesn't my goal in Analytics match my call count in CTM for the same time frame? Is it A, calls do not equal goals are conversions, calls equal events, goals are a set of requirements for the event to qualify as a conversion? Or is it B, even if the goal's only requirement is to be a call, Google doesn't report in real time, meaning there can be a delay for the event to appear in Analytics? So this is a trick question. It is both A and B. Those are two very common scenarios that take place. So timing does tend to throw things off a little bit. So just, yep, that's why we like to advise 24 hours for the events to show. Then we have another one for you, which is I see paid campaign data in the call log and in analytics, but I don't see the conversion in AdWords. Why would this happen? Is it the goal, or is the goal imported into AdWords? Is the conversion in AdWords turned on? Or is the goal in analytics turned on? So that's another one where those are actually all correct. These are other very common occurrences that we see. So once you create the goal, you can't forget to import it into AdWords. And then once it's in AdWords, I've seen it before. People turn the conversions off. Same in analytics, you can turn the goals off. So just a few troubleshooting tools for you. Oh, I see we did have some people chime in with the right answers. So brownie points for you. All right, so next we're going to get into the Google AdWords, now Google Ads side of it. So this is going to be directly focusing on click-to-calls and call extensions. So let's jump back into CTM and review that integration. Here we go. So to get to the integrations, we go to our Settings tab, Integrations, and now we're going to go to our Google Ads. Oh, you know what? Before we can do that, I actually need to buy a number for this. So I will just use an Alabama, sign, purchase. The reason being that you have to have an offline tracking source for this to work. So we have a preset for add extension, so we can then hit save and continue. Okay. So make sure that my number is added to our call settings. All right. So you can see what I just did is I just purchased a new number. Add extension is off site, so that's why we're not seeing a target number, because we're not going to try to swap for it. And I'm just going to go ahead and put add extension as the label, so that comes through. Okay, so now let's backtrack. Integrations, Google Ads. Okay, so the first thing it's going to ask us to do is associate a tracking source, and as it says right here, it must be an offline source. So that's why I have to go set up one, because I didn't do that before. So there we go. Now our first option is going to be to delay sending the event into Google Analytics. Now I am going to advise doing that. I'm going to explain why as we go on. So then we hit activate call extension. Once we do that, we'll see that a tracking script has appeared. So what we can do, we want to copy this because we're going to be actually installing a script inside of AdWords. Now, the purpose of this is we're trying to replace the lack of tracking that we get since there's no session. So because we don't have our tracking code on the page because it's never visited, we're going to actually install a script inside of AdWords and then ping AdWords to try to get the attribution. So we are going to cover how to do this, but if you wanted to review it again afterwards, we do have step-by-step instructions here on how to do that as well. So let's hop over to our Google Ads. Oh, that reminds me. Quick poll. See how the get a group feel for this. The Google AdWords, or now Google Ads new interface, do we love it? Do we hate it? Or are we like, meh, kind of iffy about it, don't love it, don't hate it? Let's see. Well, let's take a look. So it looks like a majority of us are just kind of meh about it, and 20% of us actually love it. But we don't have any haters, so that's kind of a first. I was a little slow. I wasn't real enthusiastic about it right away, but I have grown to actually really enjoy it. So I do like the new interface. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to install a script inside of ads. So to do that, we're going to head over to our tools, and then under the bulk options or actions, we have scripts. And then we're going to come to the add script button. Like with pretty much all of our configurations, the first thing you need to do is name it. I feel like it always knows when I'm sharing a screen, so it knows to run extra slowly. Come on, you can do it. Here we go. So we're going to call this CTM, or calls from CTM. Now there's already going to be a little bit of coding in here. We can just highlight over and paste in. And then we want to save it and authorize it. Which is just allowing us to run. Sometimes it can be a little glitchy like that. It is saved, so if we come back to our scripts, cause from CTM, so it was enabled. It's really annoying that it's glitchy like that sometimes. So since this isn't like a live JavaScript living on your page tracking the sessions, we have to tell it how often it should run. So the smallest time frame they're going to give us is hourly. So we want to set it to hourly and hit save. Okay, authorize. You can do it. You can do it. All right, I think we're good. There we go. So now we have our script scheduled to run hourly, and what it's going to do is it's going to be pinging Google saying, hey, do you have any, have you tracked any calls to the source that we specified, in this case, ad extension, and if you did, will you pass us the campaign, ad group, and keyword data from that call? So that is why we give the option to delay sending that event into analytics. This is going to allow us to capture the campaign information, attribute it to the call, and then send the call from CTM into analytics. So that way the data will be consistent between the three programs. If this is disabled, we'll send the event immediately after the call is completed, and then it won't have any of the campaign data associated with it. So that's the reasoning behind that. Okay, let's come back over here. So now that that is set up, we are good. In order for Google to track the calls, we have to use Google's call reporting. So let me show you what that looks like. So here's some of the call extensions we already have configured. So when we're setting up our extension, the phone number we enter here, we would want to be our ad extension phone number. So I could actually come back, go to my tracking numbers, just go to edit so I can copy this. So I would want to grab this and then paste this in here so that this will be ringing to our forwarding number. Now this is where Google provides the call forwarding by enabling the call reporting. So what this will do is that Google will actually put a tracking number over top of our tracking number, so that in this way, Google's tracking the call as well as us. When the script runs, we're going to be able to match that data back to each other, and then they're going to pass us the campaign, the ad group, and the keyword data that generated that call. Another thing to note about ad extensions and click-to-calls is that because there's no session, you cannot import a goal from analytics into AdWords for those calls because there's not going to be a GCL ID. So the only way that these calls can count as a conversion is actually in the setup right here. So under the conversion action, you have to assign it a call conversion action. So I think by default, they'll give you one called calls from ads, or you could create some different ones. This is one for, you know, a 10-minute call, and then just a generic call one. So we can set it to 10-minute call, so that based on how this is set up, if somebody calls the Google forwarding number that then calls us, if this call was greater than 10 minutes long, this would count as a conversion inside of AdWords. So we can go ahead and hit save. So that is the setup of that. Now it does get a little bit tricky, because if Google doesn't provide a forwarding number, they have no record that that call took place. So what's going to happen is we're going to be able to track the call inside of CTM, but we won't be able to attribute any campaign data to it, because according to Google, it never happened. So anytime, I believe I actually have, not in this one, but in this one, let me show you a report of what that looks like. So I can run a filter for just my ad extensions. Go. So when we get the campaign information, it's going to look like this. But when the call comes in, it's going to have no visitor data. As that script runs inside of AdWords, we're going to ping AdWords, say, hey, do you have any data that matches back to these calls? If they do, then they're going to pass us this information, which is the campaign, ad group, and keyword, and then it can qualify to count as a conversion inside of AdWords. Now, in the case that we weren't able to find any attribution, it would look something like this. This is a test account, and I would say most of these calls are probably junk, but I would say that Google does provide a forwarding number about 70% of the time. When it comes to ad extensions and click-to-calls, it is very common for the attribution to be spotty. And all that really means is that Google wasn't able to provide us with a forwarding number. But if we wanted to have a way to double check that, we can. And that would be by going to the reports, predefined reports, basic, and then call detail. So we're probably going to see, oh, it actually did save my time frame. What is this? October 2016. August. So this is not finding any call data. So this would tell me that because there's no call data here, we shouldn't have any attribution inside of the call log. So this is a way that we can cross-check to see when, if and when we should have some attribution. But in this case, this reporting right here actually looks pretty legit, because they're not tracking any of the calls. So that is the click-to-call and ad extension portion of the integration. So we are going to press forward. And like I said, we do have a webinar that we do every other week that is strictly for the analytics and Google Ads side of things. So if you want to revisit that, we'll be having that again next Wednesday. Okay, and then moving forward, we're going to take a look at some advanced troubleshooting scenarios. So if you think you know the answer, put them into the question box and you'll get unlimited brownie points. I'll just start giving out bogus numbers. So, all right, our first scenario is, why would an organic tracking source not have any visitor website information? Any ideas why we would be seeing reporting like this? It would be probably because the CTM tracking script isn't on the page and the number is hard-coded. So what that means is that they actually took this phone number here and put that onto the landing page itself. We see this a lot more commonly with paid campaigns because they're using landing pages. So it's very common for people to just put that number on the page and not include our tracking code, so that it's basically an offline source, so thus we aren't able to attribute any session data. All right, up next, why doesn't my AdWords call have any paid campaign information? So we can see there's a GCL ID, so that means that this was a true AdWords click. But what is jumping ahead of itself is that there's no cookies. So what happened is that analytics is not tracking this session. So because analytics isn't tracking this session, they can't, even if they are connected to AdWords, they're not tracking the session to pass us the campaign information. So anytime you see 0 cookies, that is probably the issue. Okay, so why doesn't this AdWords call have any paid campaign information? In this case, it looks like we have a mix match of the Google Analytics properties. So what happened is we recognize this analytics property on the page, but we actually sent the event into this property. So if there's a mix match in properties, there's a solid chance you're not going to get proper attribution. Okay. Up next, why doesn't this AdWords call have any paid campaign information? So there's actually pretty easy sign right here. But if we went down our common troubleshooting, it's too short to see. It probably cut off if there was a GCL ID. We see a cookie, we see a property, but what we don't see is the little link icon, which means we did not trigger an event to go into analytics. So it was probably a filter that prevented this from going in, or analytics was never connected and configured in the first place. Okay, so with this one, why isn't there any paid campaign information for this call? So it says continue to the next slide. So here we can see that Google Analytics and AdWords aren't connected. So even though Analytics is on the page and it's tracking the session, but if Analytics and AdWords aren't connected, we're not going to be able to get that campaign data. So that's another common issue. This is going to tell us we did trigger an event, but it didn't make it into AdWords because they're not talking. And if they were connected, it would actually say, and it would let us know what Google AdWords account it was connected to. Okay, so scenario number 6, why isn't the source Google AdWords when I can see CPC data in the URL? So here we can see it's direct traffic, okay. And we have a cookie, that's good. We have a property, we can see the link, so we know he's triggered the event. But what actually happened here is we're using UTM parameters and not auto tagging. So that means inside of AdWords, auto tagging wasn't enabled. So, and that is what our tracking source is looking for to swap for the number. So actually, I forgot to show you that, so I will show you that in just a moment. So number 7, why isn't there campaign information for my ad extension? Now, this one actually has about 6 different things that could have gone wrong along the way. The tracking source could have been left blank or the wrong on the Google integration page. The tracking script could not be installed properly or installed at all inside of Google AdWords. The script could have been installed but not scheduled to run. It could have been a wrong number. So somebody who did a misdial. It could also be that Google didn't track the call. If Google doesn't have any record of the call, they won't have any information to report back to us. This normally happens when they don't provide a forwarding number. And lastly, it could have been a timing issue. Google's scripts are scheduled to run hourly. Hopefully by now I've made it pretty clear that Google does not work in real time. So there can be all sorts of timing issues that are going to come into play. Okay, and then this one, what is wrong with this picture? This is the old analytics here. So usually if you see 5 cookies, that's a sign that it has old analytics, very outdated. It's going to be hurting you. So please update it. And then what it does, it's usually this UTM-Z guy here writes in bogus data that then tells that the source is direct none, even though we probably have campaign information. So it'll corrupt that. All right, and here is a high-level overview of what all those problems we just solved. So let's jump back to my other screen because I forgot to show you auto tagging. So inside of Google Ads, here we go. If you go to your settings tab and then account settings, this is where we're going to have auto tagging and whether or not it's enabled. And again, that's just writing in the GCL ID for the into the landing page URL, which is going to trigger the swap for us. Okay, we're going to move on to some more exciting things. Let me switch my screen, and that is going to be Bing Ads. So we've actually added a couple of new really exciting integrations over this last year, one being Bing and the other being Facebook. So I'm going to try to cover these and not go too much over time. So let's go ahead and dive into Bing. Okay, so I think we're done with this. Okay, to get to our Bing integration, we're going to head back to our settings tab, integrations, and then we have Bing. Oops, jump accounts. So let's go to Bing. Come on. Now, one of the first things it's going to ask is for a developer token. So it's pretty quick and easy to grab that. If you just click this link here, it's going to have you sign in, and then it's going to give it to you right here. So I'd grab this, come back over here, plug that in, tell it to link to Bing. It's going to give me a drop down in a moment. Come on. That one doesn't work. I'll try this one. All right, let's try this again. It's thinking really hard. Okay, well, this is locking up a little bit. So what it should do is give me a drop down of the different Bing campaigns I have. So I actually have a few of them that I should be able to select, but it's locking up, pardon me. So I'm just going to continue as if it's working properly. So once it's connected, the next thing we would do is simply we would want to map how we want that data to go. So let's hop over into Bing. So here's the account it's supposed to be connecting to. So the Bing integration works by having offline conversions. And as soon as you have an offline conversion created, it's going to automatically add a MS Click ID to the URL, much like how Google does a GCL ID. So what we would need to do is create a new conversion goal. And then we would let it know that it's an offline, and then we would name it. So I'm just going to say Bing calls and date it. Hit next. And then it's going to give us a few options on how we want to customize this. And so do we want them to have a value? And then if we have repeat calls, do we want it to count for all calls or just the first time caller? And we can also set our cookie duration. So I'm going to say all calls and then hit save. So now what we have is Bing calls 9/12/18. When I come over here, I just want to put that in exactly. If I was adding a value, I could enter that here. And then I have the option to automatically send conversions, or I could have it be I only want to send manual conversions when it's marked as a call sale. So there's some different ways that we could do it. This will send it for calls and call sales, or if we leave these unchecked, we could manually do it with triggers. So I'm going to leave them both checked and then hit save. Now, if we wanted to, we could create a different conversion name for the call sale. I think I already have one. I'll make that my call sale. And that way we'll have calls go into this conversion name and then call sales go into this conversion name. So that is Bing. It's not being too friendly with this. So I apologize for that. If I hop into, I believe, this account, maybe it's my user. We do have calls that have come in, and you can check our delivery log. This is really helpful if you're having any troubleshooting, if you're saying you're not seeing your calls inside of Bing. This will actually tell you the call ID and the status, so successfully sent, or if it does run into an error, we'll try to resend it. So this was that same call, but it went through successfully. And if you click into it, it'll actually pull up that call inside of the call log so that I know that this call went in as a conversion. So little troubleshooting tools with Bing. All right, next on our agenda is our newest integration of Facebook. We can now send all calls into Facebook ads and do some pretty cool stuff around that. So let's go ahead and jump back in, and I'll show you how to set all that up. Go to Settings, Integrations, and then we'll head over to Facebook. And we're going to tell it to link to Facebook. Here we go, so that's using my user, and then I need to select my account. I have two different ones. I'm going to say my Coco Loco one. Now, this integration works a little differently than some of our other ones. So what we're actually going to be doing is adding call tracking metrics as a partner inside of your Facebook ads. So this is our partner ID. So we want to grab this. And then here is my Facebook ads account. So I want to head over to my business settings. and then go to partners. I'm going to want to add us as a partner and then paste in that partner ID. So perfect. I can add it to this page, but really what I want to do is add it to the offline event set, and then I can choose what event set, if one or both, that I want to send all the calls into. So I'm going to send it into one I've already created called Calls from Facebook Ads, and say assign. So done. We're looking good. So now we can come here and see that we are assigned to that event set. Okay, so this is really just allowing us to see that data. So now the next thing we need to do is to set up the trigger to send calls into Facebook. So I can come from here and say, or I believe manage triggers. It should create one for me, I thought. Okay. Facebook, call it calls. Now, one thing about this is it's only available on the Marketing and Contact Center plan because it uses triggers. So keep that in mind. So I'm going to hit save. We're actually going to be getting into triggers a lot more in depth tomorrow. But we're going to tell it to trigger for all activities. And then we're going to set up our workflow, and we're going to add an action of sending a Facebook offline conversion. So we have a lot of different fields where we can customize how we send the data into, but today we're just going to focus on the required fields. So first is the event set ID. So we can grab that by coming into our ads and going to our offline events. Probably could have clicked it right there too. Now here's the event set ID that I'm going to be trying to match to. So I can copy this. And then I want to put that in. My event name. Now this is going to be when we can configure what we want this to go in as. These are going to be leads, but if I wanted to, I could send it in as a purchase or any of these other options. I think lead makes the most sense. It is going to require you to put in a currency. This is Facebook's requirements. And the last thing it's going to ask you for is a value. So this you can customize kind of like most of our other offline events. So you could do it by a conversion amount if you're scoring calls, and that'll automatically assign it. It could be by total talk time. That's typically how we do offline events and analytics. Or if you just assign a numeric value right here, it'll be the same for all of them. So there's a lot of different ways that you can set that up. But I'm going to say total talk time. And then hit save. You know, I want this to go in for all calls, but if I wanted to, I could make it specific to just my Facebook calls. So I could say tracking source. I actually don't have one for Facebook yet, but say website, because that's probably where it will qualify. So now any calls that come into my website tracking source, we're going to try to send, or we're going to send this event. That's wrong. There we go. Excellent. Hit save. So now as the calls come in, we're going to send an event just like we do for analytics, just like we do for Bing, and it report as an offline event inside of Facebook ads. Now what we can do, if I increase my date frame, you'll actually see a whole bunch that I've sent in. Now, this is pretty cool. What this is telling me is that out of roughly 4,000 calls that I've sent into Facebook, it was able to match 65% of those people to an actual Facebook user, which I think is pretty cool right there. Some pretty cool stats that 65% of these people are Facebook users, so they're actually able to match the call to a Facebook user profile. So that's really what this means. What's also important to know is that Facebook does have a minimum threshold. So they're not going to, due to all the privacy stuff they've been going through recently, they're not going to even attempt to match them to the people until it meets their minimum threshold, which they're not completely transparent about. But just from my observation, I think it's around 1,000. So until you hit a sample size of 1,000 people, they're not even going to try to match it just so that it can stay really anonymous. Hopefully that makes sense. So what's cool now is when we go to our ad manager, okay, my date frame looks pretty good. So maybe I'll make it a little longer. There. So that'd be through the end of the month. We did have some ads running. So what I can do is actually turn my offline conversion tracking. Now here's what we were able to map. Of those 4,000 calls, I was sending every call that we had come in into Facebook. And then of those 4,000, it was able to match 65 of them to actual Facebook people. And then it was able to match 2 to people or 5 to people who actually interacted with my Facebook paid ads. And this is where we're sending those calls. So it's going to go in as offline leads. There's some other pretty cool things that you can do inside of here. So we can customize our columns. I always thought this was pretty cool. They'll allow you to see view through for like say a day versus, we'll do 7 days and 28 days. So a view through versus a click to let you know how these are really influencing the people. So now it broke up our data a little differently. So these are purchases. We're not doing that. We're doing offline leads. Here we go. So of our leads, it looks like at 7 days, actually it was just about the same between, but typically it might break it up a little differently to let you know how people are interacting. Some people, it's more like multi-touch. You can see that the person viewed the ad, didn't actually click it, but then, later on called from a different tracking source, maybe even Google Organic, they'll be able to attribute that person as a view through. Why we can also look at people who clicked and then placed the conversion action. So some really cool stuff that you can do inside of Facebook and their reporting. Pretty exciting. Still very new for us, so we're learning as well. One of the things that we've really kind of discovered is that Facebook is really about protecting the user information. So one of the things that we're not able to do is tell you inside of the call log exactly who these people were. We can make an assumption, but Facebook isn't going to be able to allow us to relate these 3 people back to 3 people inside of the call log. Alrighty, and with that said, we're actually doing fantastic on time. Do we have any questions? That completes our course for the day. I did hear that there were some audio issues from me earlier. Hopefully that wasn't affecting too many people. Probably just the internet going in and out. But if anyone has any questions regarding the material we covered today, there was a lot. We had a packed 2 hours full of information. I see a question, which says question. I'm happy to hang around and address any questions coming in. If you don't have any questions, have a fantastic day. I hope we will be seeing you tomorrow and Friday. And then again, I will have this uploaded on this site by the end of the day today. Someone asked, can you do a CTM webinar on just the Facebook integration? Yes, we can do that. We should probably do that. I don't want to, no. Yes, that's definitely on my roadmap of something that we need to be doing soon. So I will speak with the team, and hopefully when we decide to do that, there will definitely be an announcement. So pay attention to our newsletters, and then the what are they called? The shout outs that we do every month. So thank you for that suggestion. I knew it was coming, something that we need to do. Let's see, another one regarding Facebook. What are the most used fundamentals one should focus on when it comes to AdWords, analytics, and Facebook integration? Ooh. Maybe timing. Timing is definitely something to think about. I did touch on that a little bit early on. Timing and attribution can be very tricky, so it's definitely helpful to have in your mind when you're getting started what your attribution model is inside of analytics, what your attribution model is inside of AdWords, and then be very conscious of what attribution models you're using inside of CTM. That will definitely going into even setting it up with that type of understanding will be very useful and help you troubleshooting down the road. Other than that, make sure our tracking code is on the page, definitely useful. When it comes to things like Bing, Facebook, Google Analytics, you need to make sure that all of their tracking codes are present too. When it comes to Facebook, they don't have an auto tagging the way that Google and Bing do, so it's really helpful if you're tagging your destination URLs with parameters so that we can actually get that attribution inside of the call log for your Facebook calls. So that's a great question. I could probably go on forever about that one, but yeah, and like I said before, we are going to have that webinar next Wednesday, which will just be focusing on the analytics and AdWords piece of this. That'll go into it a little bit more detail. Somebody says they would watch the Facebook webinar for sure. Awesome. Well, I will definitely speak with the team and see when we can fit that in. And, thank you all for attending today. I really appreciate, I know that we all are busy and that this course is typically, I highly recommend everyone attending all 5 days. So that's, a good portion of your work week. I am truly grateful that you all took the time out to participate and for the great engagement that I've had throughout these classes. So thank you. I really appreciate that. I'm not seeing any more questions come in. There is going to be a survey after the webinar is over. Please bring any feedback that you have to surface. We read all of it. That's really how we even came to do these courses, is from our customers' feedback. So please let us know what you're thinking. We want to make this as useful for you as possible. All right, I don't see any more questions coming in, so have a fantastic day. To our friends on the East Coast, be safe. Flo, I think they're calling her now, she's coming. We're going to be very fortunate. Looks like she's going to miss us. We'll just have some heavy rain. So have a great day.